It's the AgMedia Roundtable on RealAgriculture.com. We're here for another edition of the AgMedia Roundtable. Today we're joined by Claire Cowan. She is the editor of Ontario Grain Farmer Magazine. Welcome today, Claire.
Hi, Sean. How are you?
I'm doing good. And we're also joined by Lindsay Smith. She's the editor of Grain News. Welcome today, Lindsay.
Hi, Sean.
Well, we've really hit a bit of a snag in terms of seeding. It would appear that things have come to a bit of a grinding halt, at least today, for everybody. Let's start in the east. Claire, what is going on there? I'm hearing everything from 1 to 3 inches of rain.
Yeah, we've got a ton of rain. It poured down last night over much of the province, and everything's sort of come to a bit of a halt today. Last week and into this week, we got a good chunk of the work done, but guys are still way behind, and there's a lot of concern. They're saying it's about 60 to 65% of the corn is planted, and maybe a few soybeans in the ground, but certainly no more than 8% soybeans. So we're quite behind, and people are starting to get a little bit worried.
You're ahead of Ohio. I heard Ohio's 10% planted, so there's a positive.
Of corn?
Of corn, yeah.
Ooh. Well, down sort of in the Essex-Kent area where they've got some of that heavy clay, they're the ones that are hurting the most. They're probably around 40 to 50 or even less in some areas. So.
Yeah. Lindsay, basically as you start in Alberta and you head east, it seems to go from good to worse. Is that how you would put it?
Yeah, definitely. And even within Saskatchewan, but yes, as far as the prairies are concerned, it just gets worse the further east you go. It's really, I'd say here, from the guys I'm talking to, probably 10 days to 2 weeks behind. The crop report came out for last week, and I think it's had it pegged at 23%, ending May 16th, but that's last year at this time we had 44% in. So this year's kind of funny in that, well, not funny, haha, but in that we had that just cold, wet, long winter, and the spring is just late. So we've had actually really great weather for the past couple weeks, but we just started out so wet that even all that wonderful sun and wind hasn't helped everyone. The West is definitely doing better. There are some pockets of guys being 50% done, that sort of stuff. But as you head east, it gets pretty tough.
Yeah. The Manitoba flood, we were out there this week shooting some stuff for Real Agriculture, and I've been reading some stuff, though it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be. Are you hearing some of the same things?
Yeah, there's certainly around that area, there's a lot of potato land around there, so that was a big concern. But the latest reports are that some of that will be flooded out, but not maybe as much as they thought. What I found kind of surprising is the Red River Valley was actually drying up quite nicely, and they have just had poorly timed rain over and over for the past couple weeks, and they're actually further behind than I thought they would be, and that I think they thought they would be. I was in Manitoba in late April, and things were actually shaping up okay, and since then the weather just hasn't cooperated. So
for Alberta and Saskatchewan, there's plans of rain all through the long weekend. Usually we hope for no snow on May long weekend. That's usually a given. Claire, what is the forecast for Ontario? It's been wet all week. Is it going to dry up?
It's been wet all week, and it's supposed to be wet off and on throughout the province, sort of in patches through the weekend too. There's some guys that are hoping for some sun over the weekend, but it's only in patches. So we'll see. I think we're going to need quite a bit of sun to dry some areas out, especially down in southwestern Ontario when you get into that heavy clay soil. The guys that are on the sand are in a little bit better shape. But things are pretty rough down south.
So I would imagine there's lots of consideration for dropping some corn acres and adding to the soybean plans.
Yeah, I was talking to some guys about that today, and how things shape up this weekend, I think, will definitely spark some decisions. Not many people have made decisions on that quite yet, but I know depending on how wet things are this weekend, some guys were thinking of dropping a couple hundred heat units down on their corn varieties or switching over to soybeans. But those decisions in a lot of the province have yet to be made.
So you said switching down a couple hundred heat units?
Yeah, 100 or 200 to a variety to a different variety that'll handle a bit of a shorter season.
Lindsay, are you hearing anything about people making some changes to their cropping plan based on, seeding more canola because of the wetness, or maybe even planting some more wheat because we may not have a wheat board in a year?
Yeah, at this point, I haven't heard a ton of switching necessarily of plans just yet. I think this week will definitely play a big role in either crop type or even variety that gets swapped out. I did speak with one farmer who does here in Saskatchewan that does plant soybeans, and he's got kind of a window where he kind of has a cutoff that he'll switch soybean varieties after that cutoff, and that's coming up. He's certainly not there yet. As far as the wheat board playing a role, at this point, I think most of this province just wants to get a crop in, and I don't know that they're really, really making a difference or making changes based on whether or not there'll be a wheat board. I think at this point, guys just want to get a crop in.
Yeah. Have any of you noticed, it seems locally I've been picking up on, there seems to be a lot more education on the need to plant early. And I think it's because of how wet it is. Guys are trying to get in while they can. I know in Ontario there's been we're trying to get the corn in last week before the scheduled rain. Guys are working extremely long hours. I've seen the same thing here locally. Lindsay, have you picked up on that at all?
I was speaking with one farmer down in the southwest corner who he would definitely say that the farmers who started sooner than anyone else really thought was wise are actually the ones who are furthest ahead right now. And so I think that as those kind of anecdotes are thrown around, the pressure is just on to start earlier and earlier every year. And, yes, there's usually, especially for canola, the earlier you can get it in, the better to a degree, and those sorts of things, that there is that pressure, but there's also risk in going in way too early. But I think, a lot of guys were burned last year by not getting going when maybe it wasn't ideal, but they could get on the field, and then the rain started and they just couldn't. So I think this year there were those guys that just got out there. But I think every day I get either a friend or a farmer sending me a new picture of getting stuck out there. And so there's still so much water.
I've seen some good ones. Like I got one this morning of a high clearance spray, a case high clearance sprayer that was buried to the point you couldn't even see the tires.
Yeah,
it was a good one. Claire, where obviously the people that pushed hard last week before the weekend rain came, I know a couple guys that finished on Friday night. Boy, they are really thankful.
Exhausted.
They're just waking up actually.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of guys that did pretty good last week and got a lot in, and I was talking to some farmers that they were working. I was talking to one guy, and he was out in the field for 72 hours out of a 4-day period, and just going like crazy and trying to stay awake and get it in as fast as possible. Especially since last year there was a lot of talk about the benefits of early planting, and so a lot of guys are still have that in the back of their mind, and so they really don't want to risk having to wait until after the rain. But overall, quite a few guys got a lot of stuff in, but on those heavier soils, they weren't able to. So there's still a lot more to go.
How are guys feeling for the guys that do have their corn in? Some of that corn's been sitting in the ground for quite a while. Are they still feeling optimistic, or are they getting their rotary hose ready, or what's happening?
There's some concern, but there's still some optimism. I know it's been colder here than it typically is, so that's a bit of a concern. But for the most part, they're still a little bit optimistic. But there's that hesitancy to be too optimistic with a season like this. Well,
last year was so perfect that.
Yeah, that's the other thing that sort of smarts about the whole situation, is that last year was just so ideal, and we had that early warm spring, and everybody got planted early. That the memories of that compared to this season are a little tough to swallow some days.
On the West, this is year 2 of these shenanigans. Lindsay, for the guys that are seeded, how the guys you're talking to, how are they feeling?
Oddly enough, there are certainly even some areas that could actually use a rain, which they will probably get this weekend. So I have actually heard the term ideal conditions out of some farmers' mouths. So, there are certainly areas and pockets where they, as long as we get even an average growing season, they're probably going to be very happy with the soil moisture that we had last year and going into this winter, and they got the crop in a decent amount of time. And if they get some rain now, they're actually going to be doing, they'll be quite happy. So
yeah,
there is pockets of that. So.
Yeah, there's a number of irrigation farmers locally here that have been talking. We're going to probably have to turn the water on here because we didn't get to do our fall work last year, because the snow came so quickly. Mm-hmm. Had to do a couple different passes this year, and we could use some rain. We're getting it today, but and obviously Peace River is still very dry with a lot of the forest fires that are going on in northern Alberta. So. Some rain for some areas, oddly enough, would be very warranted. I'm sure if we could put in a pipeline over the weekend to pump it from Manitoba to Peace River, we would do that, but it's going to be a little bit tough.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, well, that's another edition of the AgMedia Roundtable. Ladies, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right.
Talk to you later, Sean. Bye, Lindsay.
Bye.